Hello. Since you have watched the brief introduction on the definition of culture, let's dive deeper on the concepts of culture. Previously, we learned that culture has seven concepts, which can be called as COM-C. It changes, it is adaptive, it is learned, it is also maladaptive, it is shared, it is everything, and it affects biology. Now, let's start with E. Culture is everything. It is what a person has, does, and thinks as a part of society. This implies all of a person's belief system, set of behaviors, and material possessions. So everything you see, hear, feel, taste, think, and speak is part of culture. To simplify that, we can divide it into two parts. First is the material culture. It is all that you can see and touch. It is the visible part of culture. It can be the clothes, your smartphone, and even the buildings. Well, material culture change over time depending on the environment. For example, the material culture on the Neolithic period is different from the material culture of today. Another example is the difference between culture groups. The common food in China can be different from our common food here in the Philippines. Okay, this is the example of material culture. We can have the dresses, the clothes that we wear. We can see the stones that the people in the Neolithic period uses, or even the smartphones. Next is the non-material culture. Unlike material culture, it is not visible. So that means it is the intangible parts of culture. It is the ideas we have, the philosophy and beliefs. It is the words in books, and it is our lifestyle. But just like the material culture, non-material culture differs over time and differs between culture groups. This is the example of non-material culture. We have words, the words in books we cannot touch, the ideas we cannot touch physically, and the philosophies that have written cannot be touched. It is in our idea. It exists in our minds. So next is culture is learned. We learn culture through our family, school, church, and other social institutions. Under this concept, we have three kinds of learning. First is enculturation. It simply means that you learn your own culture. For example, your family may teach you how to behave properly. What are the do's and don'ts, or what are the actions that can lead you to jail, or your church may teach you what is right and what is wrong. Next is acculturation. Sorry for that problem. This acculturation is where you learn another culture to have those considered desirable traits of that culture. Why do you want to learn that? Because it will make you belong in that other group. However, it is noted that you don't lose your culture that is taught to you by your parents and other social institutions. For example, we are influenced by the Western world, the Western lifestyle. So our clothing have changed, our alphabet was matched to the Western style of writing. However, if we notice, we did not remove our unique Filipino culture, such as the po and opo. We only absorb it because it is the dominant one, and if you don't follow it, sometimes the society will think you as a deviant one, but not always. And lastly is the culturation. It may be different from the first two, but it is connected somehow to acculturation. Deculturation happens if a particular cultural characteristics of a culture group lost or um, cease to exist. Sometimes it is because when older generations comes into conflict with the needs and realities of younger generation. There are certain parts of culture that we no longer should should continue to do because we finally learned that it is not appropriate. It may be insensitive to other cultures, and there are cultures that is considered as old, that it is not that it is not timely, and sometimes deculturation happens because the culture absorbed too much of the dominated group. We tend to think that some of the indigenous groups, I mean the culture of the indigenous groups, tend to cease to exist because um, because they are pressured to absorb the culture, the Western lifestyle. So do you get it? I hope so. So next is culture is shared. Since it is learned, it is implied that we share it. By teaching it to others, we can share it in different ways, but the most popular is the intergenerational sharing of culture. It happens inside a culture group because older generation is passing the culture to younger generation, and when younger generation becomes mature enough or becomes old enough, they will in turn teach it to the future generation. Moving on, we have culture affects biology. There are particular traditions that requires humans to modify their body to fit the norms of the group. Why? Because in some culture, it is the standard of beauty, or in some culture, it is the social stratification, the place in the society. So we have examples. First is the lip plates from the Morsi tribe of Ethiopia in Africa. This lip plate that you can see serves as a sign of beauty in their tribe. And another example is foot binding practice of women in China. We already know that how and why did they do that. However, as time goes by, this culture of foot binding ceases to exist because we now learn that women should not be foot binded because it is others think that it is a sign of oppression in women. Okay, fifth is culture is adaptive. Culture serves as a tool for survival in the ever-changing environment. For example, we have here the Inuit tribe. Their culture adapts according to their environment. We can see that during their hunting and fishing expedition, we can see that this man builds an igloo. And we can also see their unique type of clothing while going outdoors. So, cultures adapt because humans need to survive. I hope that you learn while I am explaining the things that you need to learn. So, moving on, we have culture is maladaptive. The culture we create can also cause some serious problems, and by problems, I mean climate change. It could be the one problem, or second, it could be a problem with another culture group. Our culture, our culture remains, however, the environment is changing. So this is what we mean by culture is maladaptive. Instead of adapting to the environment is adapting to the culture, and the culture remains stagnant while the environment is changing. It could be for better, it could be for worse. But in our case, in today's present situation, it became for worse. It, our culture, we now realize the effects, the long-term effects of our culture. We now see, we normalize seeing super typhoons, seeing forest fires because of climate change. And why do we have climate change? Because there is a problem in our culture. We excessively use cars, plastics, but we did not see the problem that it caused in our environment. So next and last is culture changes. It is never static because we will continually change our culture depending on the environment. So imagine this, we are in the period of climate change. Our culture may evolve because of this. Because we have stronger typhoons, houses should be stronger too. We can see that there is change constantly, even though it is not every day. If we look back, we can see a huge change in our culture. For example, from telephones, from these big computers, this computers that looks like a cabinet, we now have smartphones, laptops. There's a change in the way we speak. The English language evolved. The way we dress also evolved. Everything is evolving, everything is changing because the environment is also changing. So now, let's wrap up our discussion. Today, we learned that there are 7 concepts of culture, and we can call it as CALMSEA or CALMSEA. We mean that culture changes, it is adaptive, it is learned. It is also maladaptive, it is shared, it is everything, and it affects biology. So, thank you everyone. I hope that you have learned something while listening to this presentation. I hope to